You've never heard the sky scream before. I hadn't either, until 37 minutes into Flight 2375. We were 300 miles southeast of Miami, skimming the northern edge of the Bermuda Triangle. The sky had been clear just minutes before. Then, without warning, the clouds above twisted like wet cloth being wrung out by unseen hands. The altimeter shuddered. A high-pitched ringing filled my headset, like feedback, but sharper, almost alive, and then it happened. The sky opened. I know how that sounds. Like the ravings of a lunatic. But I swear to you, something tore open the blue above us like it was paper. A jagged black wound spread across the sky, pulsing with light that wasn't quite lightning, wasn't quite fire. It shimmered like oil and throbbed like it had a heartbeat. My co-pilot Kate froze mid-sentence, her mouth slack. I remember the exact words she didn't get to finish. John said this route gave him the creeps, like he saw something. Her words died. Her eyes locked on the void above. And then, something looked back. It wasn't a face. Not exactly. Just pressure, intelligence, hatred pressing down from above. A shadow slid down from the rupture, slow, deliberate, not falling, not flying, just descending, everything electronic fried in an instant. Gauges spun, the cockpit lights died, and static burst through the headset. I tried to radio a mayday, nothing but the entity's scream on every frequency. Kate was crying, whispering something over and over. I leaned closer and realized it was a name. John. 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 John was her brother. An NTSB investigator who vanished flying this exact route a year ago. My instincts screamed to pull up, bank left, do something, but the plane wouldn't respond. It was like we were caught in invisible molasses, dragged forward by an unseen force. Then I looked at my arm. A grey mark was forming, like a bruise. But wrong. It had a pattern, spirals, like a fingerprint. But moving, almost breathing. The black tear above widened, and for a second I swear I saw land. Twisted buildings, a sky with no stars, screams from a place where sound shouldn't exist. A city, a trap. I don't know, but something in me knew it wasn't Earth. Kate screamed as the shadow touched the nose of our plane. Everything went white. I woke up on the ground in a Florida field 3 days later, alone. Kate was gone. The plane was half melted, like it had been microwaved from the inside. No one could explain it. The NTSB agents didn't ask real questions. One even slipped and called themselves EDO before changing the subject. They knew something. But that mark on my arm is still there. Still grey, still breathing. And last night, it burned, and I heard Kate's voice on my radio, whispering, "Don't fly again, it's still watching." The mark on my arm has a pulse. It started yesterday morning. I woke in a cold sweat, the sheets twisted around my legs like a noose. My alarm was blinking 3:33 a.m., an hour I've come to dread. That's when it flared again. The grey spiral on my forearm pulsed with a dull heat, like coals under skin. Not painful, not yet. Just wrong. Alive. It looked different this time. The spiral had unfurled slightly, spreading into branching lines that snaked up toward my elbow. I swear they weren't there before, like it had grown overnight. I tried to shrug it off as psychological trauma, some PTSD hallucination. But the mirror didn't lie, nor did the voice. It came over my old aviation radio, the one I keep in my apartment out of habit. It's not even connected to anything anymore, just a collector's piece. But at 3:37 a.m., it crackled to life. The voice was thin, garbled, like it had been recorded on cassette and left to rot in salt water. But it was unmistakable. Kate. She said my name, twice, whispered it, pleading. Then came the scream, the same one I'd heard in the cockpit. That raw electric shriek, like metal tearing underwater. I yanked the plug from the wall, tossed the damn thing across the room. It shattered, bits of plastic skittering across the tile. I didn't sleep again that night. I've flown over the triangle dozens of times in my career. Weather anomalies, turbulence, the occasional equipment malfunction. It all comes with the territory. But this was different. This was targeted. Personal. I started digging. First stop, Kate's brother John. He'd vanished flying a recon path for the NTSB over the triangle. Unofficial mission, no public records. His name wasn't even listed in their personnel database anymore. But Kate had once shown me a photo of the two of them on her phone, back when we were stationed in Tampa together. I remembered the bar in the background, a dive called the Brass Compass, popular with Coast Guard and off-duty flyers. I drove out that afternoon. The place was half empty, same dingy neon signs buzzing over sticky tables. I asked the bartender if he remembered John. Yeah, he muttered, wiping a glass. Spook type. Government flyer, quiet, real interested in that triangle stuff. I asked if John had ever mentioned seeing anything strange. The bartender hesitated, then leaned in. Yeah, one night, drunk as hell, said he saw a hole in the ocean. Said it looked like the sea had an eye, and it blinked at him. Then he got real quiet and said something else I'll never forget. He paused. Said if the triangle doesn't take you, it marks you. I left a tip and walked out, stomach churning. Back at my apartment, I turned on the shower and stared at the mark again. The lines had crept to my bicep. It looked like a crude map now. Islands, veins. I didn't know. But when I closed my eyes, I saw the tear in the sky, the shadow sliding down, the twisted city in the other place. I also remembered the talisman. Kate had worn it, a small brass triangle hanging on a black leather cord. Said it was a pilot's charm her brother gave her. I'd barely paid attention at the time. But now, it might be the only thing that saved me. I rummaged through the box of items recovered from the crash, what little there was. Sunglasses, flight badge, part of a headset. At the bottom, wrapped in melted fabric, I found the talisman. Burned but intact. The moment I touched it, the mark stopped pulsing. I stared at the brass triangle in my hand. It hummed faintly, almost imperceptibly, like a tuning fork resonating to a frequency I couldn't hear but felt. The heat in my arm dulled. My mind cleared. And then the lights went out. I stood frozen in the pitch dark, talisman still in hand. No sound but my own breath. Then a new sound crept in, barely audible at first, a wet dragging, like something crawling across linoleum. I turned toward the hallway. Something was there, no shape, no form, just a patch of shadow, darker than anything else, rippling like hot asphalt. It slithered along the floor, slow and steady, pulsing with the same sick rhythm as the mark on my arm. The talisman flared hot. The shadow recoiled. I stepped forward, holding it out. The thing let out a low hiss, like steam escaping a pressurized pipe, and vanished through the wall. A faint wisp of black mist remained, dissolving into nothing. The power flickered back on. I dropped to my knees, heart jackhammering in my chest. They were here. Whatever they are, they weren't bound to the triangle anymore. I'd brought something back. And it was hungry. I don't know what's happening to me, but I know one thing. This mark is a beacon, and something is answering its call. I didn't plan to go back to the triangle. No sane person would, especially not after what I'd seen. But sanity left me somewhere over that black wound in the sky. The moment Kate vanished, the moment I saw that other place, reality changed, and now it's unraveling fast. 2 nights ago, I saw clouds with eyes. It wasn't a metaphor. I was watching the weather radar on my laptop, just an old habit. I still track tropical systems out of sheer muscle memory. But something weird lit up southeast of Nassau. A swirling front, low pressure, but with static overlays I'd never seen before. Not just noise, patterns. Spiral shapes embedded in the weather data. Like the mark on my arm. Curious, I pulled up the satellite imaging, and there it was. A cluster of storm clouds forming the vague outline of an eye, perfectly symmetrical, and it was staring at the camera. My laptop screen flickered, and the eye blinked. I slammed it shut and tried to breathe. It's getting worse. I didn't know who else to turn to. The FAA refused to comment on Flight 2375's crash beyond the usual boilerplate. Equipment malfunction, disorientation, atmospheric interference. No mention of the melted fuselage, no mention of Kate. So I went to someone who might have a reason to tell the truth. A guy named Alphonse Cray. A retired military pilot, Alphonse was known in certain online forums for talking about Class D anomalies. which is code for things the government won't admit exist. He lived alone in a trailer north of Jacksonville, surrounded by rusted plane parts, broken radios, and stacks of notebooks. He greeted me at the door with a sidearm on his belt and a cigarette stuck to his lip. "You flew through it, didn't you?" he said, squinting at me. "I can see it in your eyes. They always got that far-off look after." I nodded slowly. He opened the door and let me in. Alphonse poured cheap bourbon into a chipped mug and sat across from me, motioning toward the mark on my arm. "You got tagged," he said. "Same as me, same as dozens before us." He pulled up his sleeve and showed me his own mark, faded but similar. Twisted spiral lines, though his didn't glow or shift like mine. "I got hit back in '84, cargo drop. Gulf Stream shifted suddenly. Whole sky turned black, and then I woke up in the middle of a sugarcane field in Cuba. No memory of how I landed." I asked him what it meant. He lit another cigarette and leaned forward. "You ever heard of the lament configuration?" I frowned, like from that old horror movie. "No, kid. That's fiction based on fact. The triangle's older than civilization. It's not just a place, it's a wound in the fabric. Something ripped it open long ago. We've been flying too close to it ever since." I showed him the talisman. He went pale. "Where'd you get that?" "It was Kate's. Her brother gave it to her before he disappeared." Alphonse took it gently, turning it over. "This ain't a charm," he said. "It's a key. They used to call them eye locks. Carved from meteorite ore, tuned to the harmonic frequency of the tear, the only thing that can hold them back." He looked up at me, dead serious. "Don't lose it. If you do, they'll come through, all the way." I asked him what they were. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Sentinels, guardians, or maybe prisoners. We still don't know. But they're alive, thinking, waiting. That shadow you saw, that was one of them. Can they be killed? But they can be distracted, misdirected. The talisman repels them because it disrupts their resonance. But it only works for so long. You've been marked. That means they can track you across time and space." I stared at the triangle in my hand, suddenly aware of the soft thrum it emitted. "How long do I have?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to a locked cabinet and pulled out a black binder labeled Edo Sightings, classified. This was leaked by an NTSB tech back in the 90s. EDO isn't just some secret office, they're not even human. Or at least not fully. The group's called the Entity Detection Office. They monitor thin spaces, places like the Triangle, Lake Baikal, the Devil's Sea, anywhere the veil wears thin. He turned to a page and showed me a photo, grainy, black and white. It was a cockpit shot, 2 pilots frozen in terror, and outside the windshield, the same shadow I'd seen. That flight vanished in '72. Debris turned up in Peru in 2008. He flipped another page. A familiar name, John Wells, Kate's brother. There was a transcript attached, part of a voice recording. Alphonse tapped it. "You need to hear this. Redacted transcript excerpt. Flight JWNTSB 9. John, seeing the tear. It's there. Coordinates match. Oh God, something's coming through. It's not just a storm. It's alive. Tell Kate static. It's choosing me. I can feel it in my skin." End excerpt. Alphonse closed the folder. "You were on the same path, same flight line. It came for you next." I felt sick. Everything pointed to one conclusion. It didn't want the plane. It wanted pilots. People who cross too close, who see too much. Kate hadn't crashed. She'd been taken. And that voice I heard on the radio, that wasn't a message. It was a warning. When I left Alphonse's trailer that night, the sky was clear. But halfway down the highway, I noticed the clouds above had started forming spirals, and something blinked behind them. I couldn't sleep after leaving Alphonse's place. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that thing outside my cockpit window again, hovering, reaching. I could still feel its cold shadow pressing against the edges of my consciousness, like a static charge building in my bones. Worse, the mark on my arm had started to pulse faintly, like it was alive. I didn't need Alphonse to tell me something had changed. I could feel it. I needed answers, real ones. not folklore, not whispers from conspiracy forums. So I went back to the airport hangar where my logbooks were stored, buried in the back room of a maintenance building, sealed in a fireproof drawer. What I found there shattered my last grip on reality. The logs had been tampered with, pages torn out, coordinates smudged, fuel records wiped clean for the day Flight 2375 went down. But tucked behind the last complete page was something that shouldn't have been there at all. A folded document, yellowed with age and brittle at the edges. It was a flight log, but the date was June 2nd, 1956. The name listed was Captain Elias Curran. Not mine. Same aircraft model, same route. Even the tail number was nearly identical, but that wasn't the worst part. Written in shaky pen along the margins were these words: "The sky has teeth. Do not listen when it speaks in her voice." Beneath that was a crude sketch of the talisman, and under that, a name. K. Wells. My blood turned to ice. Kate. I left the hangar in a daze, logbook in hand, my fingers trembling. The world felt off. The air too still, the light too dim, like I'd stepped a few inches out of phase with reality. I went straight to John's last known address, an old two-story house in Fort Lauderdale, abandoned since 2014. Moss covered the siding, windows broken, mail still rotting in the box, but the back door was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and dust. His furniture was still there. So were his maps, stacks of them, charts of the triangle, hand-marked with ink circles and red X's, notes scrawled along the edges. They appear at magnetic convergence points. Whispers increase near lunar apex. No escape once marked, only delay. In the center of the dining room, laid out like a shrine, was an old rusted transponder, and beside it a cassette recorder. I pressed play. Tape recording, John Wells. John, it knows when you speak its name. Don't call it the entity. Don't even think of it like that. It's older than names. It wears the shape you'll most believe. Static. John, I tracked it through 32 flights. Every time someone reported a lost hour or glitch in time, I ran the numbers. It follows patterns, rhythms. There's intelligence behind it. But the worst part, short pause. John, Kate flew the route without the talisman once. It took her, but not all of her. The part that came back. It wasn't my sister. End of tape. I staggered back from the recorder, bile rising in my throat. The part that came back. I remembered the way Kate moved that day. Robotic, stiff. Her voice in the headset, flat, emotionless. That flicker of something behind her eyes. I thought it was shock. Now I wasn't so sure. I grabbed one of John's maps and stared at the red X's. There was a pattern. Every incident occurred at points where oceanic trench lines intersected with geomagnetic anomalies. There was a shape forming, a jagged loop, a symbol. It matched the one on my arm. And at the center of that symbol was a point marked simply, "The eye Alphonse had warned me." The eye isn't just a metaphor, it's a place, the epicenter of the rift, the wound in the world. And if Kate had gone there and come back, not herself, then maybe others had too. Later that night, I heard the voice again, not through a radio this time, but in my own head. It started as a low hum, a distant thrum like airplane engines far off. Then came the whisper, "Flight path locked, prepare for crossing." I dropped my glass. It shattered at my feet. I wasn't flying. I wasn't even near an aircraft. But when I checked my forearm, the spiral had begun to rotate slowly, turning inward like a drain in flesh. The talisman around my neck burned cold. Something was pulling me in again, remotely. Through the mark, I collapsed to my knees as the floor spun beneath me. For a second I saw the cockpit again. Instruments frozen, clouds forming a tunnel around the plane, and in the middle, a figure in the clouds, towering, unmoving, watching me. I blinked, and it was gone. I was back in John's living room, gasping for air, my heart slamming in my chest. It wasn't a memory, it was a preview. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back. One more flight, straight into the heart of the triangle, to the eye. If I didn't face it head-on, it would keep coming for me, through mirrors, through dreams, through every sliver of static in my life. I contacted a friend of mine, Darius, a cargo pilot who owed me favors. I told him I needed to rent a bird for one last run. No questions asked. He just stared at me and said, "You're chasing ghosts." I smiled bitterly. Number, I think I'm chasing something worse. I'd made peace with the possibility I wasn't coming back. There was no protocol, no backup, no black box that would explain away what I was about to do. Just a hunch, a handful of forbidden coordinates, and the throbbing brand on my forearm like a timer counting down. Darius handed me the keys to a battered Beechcraft King Air 200 and didn't say a word. His eyes lingered on me longer than necessary, like he wanted to stop me. Like he knew. I didn't let him. By 1:34 a.m., I was back in the sky, pushing into that yawning stretch of cursed airspace. The Bermuda Triangle. The flight was smooth at first, the sea below shimmered under a crescent moon, and the stars overhead blinked like they didn't care I was trespassing. For the first time since that night, the cockpit felt like a sanctuary again, until the instruments started lying. The GPS flickered and spat out impossible coordinates. The altimeter spun once and dropped to 0, then corrected itself. The artificial horizon rolled 90 degrees without the plane banking an inch. Then the comms went dead, just like last time. But I was ready. I reached into my flight bag and pulled out the talisman. It was ice cold, heavier than it should have been. I clutched it to my chest and whispered Kate's name, not a prayer, just a memory. That was when the clouds appeared. Not ordinary weather. These clouds boiled into being in front of me, forming a spiraling tunnel of black and grey. Silent, motionless, like a wound in the sky had been peeled open. And at its center, something glowed faintly violet. The eye. I took the yoke and pushed forward, straight into it. Crossing the threshold was like hitting another dimension. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. There was no turbulence, no wind shear, no G-force, just silence. Like I'd entered a soundproof coffin. Even the engine noise vanished, replaced by a deep, resonating hum I could feel in my teeth. Outside the windshield, the clouds churned in slow motion. Lights danced in them, iridescent, unnatural, flickering like static fireflies. I saw faces too, shapes with eyes that blinked once and then vanished into mist. The cockpit lights dimmed. The talisman grew hot. Then came the voice, not over the radio, inside my skull. Back. Again. Marked 1. I bit down on the panic rising in my throat. "Where is Kate?" I said aloud, not caring if I sounded crazy. There was silence. Then, like a chorus of broken harmonies, "She is. With us. Beyond the fold. Pieces of her still echo." I looked down at the spiral brand on my arm. It had begun to glow faintly. My skin steamed. I screamed and nearly lost control of the yoke. Outside, something was forming. A shape. Massive, blotting out the glowing eye behind it. It was like a humanoid shadow stitched together from smoke and lightning. Towering, watching, its head tilted, and it spoke again. "You carry the key. Unlock or remain." I realized it wasn't addressing me. It was addressing the talisman. I pulled it from around my neck and held it up. The eye behind the shadow flared with violet intensity. The plane lurched. I heard a screech, not mechanical, but alive. Painful, like a banshee howl layered beneath radio static. The plane was no longer flying. It was falling sideways. As if reality had tilted and gravity had picked a new direction. My stomach rose into my throat. The windshield turned pitch black. Then a flash. A room. Not a cockpit. Just white walls. Endless, and floating in the middle, Kate. She was barefoot, wearing her pilot uniform, suspended a few feet off the ground. Eyes closed, hair drifting like she was underwater. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. I tried to run to her, but my legs didn't work. I wasn't standing, I was drifting too. Every movement pushed me in a different direction. Like I was inside a zero-gravity snow globe filled with whispers, then a voice, her voice, pierced the stillness. "It's not just a place, it's a prison, a feeder. It consumes memory, identity. That's how it stays alive." I reached toward her. "Kate, we're getting out. I have the talisman. I saw your flight log. You don't understand." Her eyes snapped open, glowing white. "It marked you. You're part of the equation now, part of the loop. What loop? You can either break the cycle, the world began to shudder around us, or become the next face in the clouds. Everything shattered. I woke up screaming in the cockpit. The gauges were dead. The windshield was fractured like a spider web. The controls were frozen in place. The plane was gliding, slowly but descending. I looked outside. Water, endless black ocean, and ahead, land. I didn't remember descending. I didn't remember exiting the vortex. But I wrestled the yoke and guided the plane down in a rough emergency landing on a deserted airstrip nestled on a small island. The moment I touched down, every instrument came back to life. Time, 5:03 a.m. Date, June 2nd, the same date listed on Elias Curran's 1956 log. But it was 2025 when I took off. I staggered out of the plane onto hot tarmac, legs like jelly, ears ringing. There was no one around, just palm trees, crickets, the endless rumble of waves. I turned my arm over. The brand was gone. Only a faint scar remained, like it had burned itself out. But I knew better. The mark might have faded, but the loop hadn't ended. Not yet. I staggered across the tarmac, the Beechcraft groaning behind me as it cooled, ticking like a wound-down clock. My ears buzzed, and my skin itched like static was crawling just beneath the surface. I glanced around. No tower, no people, no signage. Just cracked concrete, overgrown with vines and jungle looming like a waiting mouth. It was an airstrip, sure, but it wasn't listed on any of my charts. And worse yet, I still didn't know how I'd landed. My memory of the final descent was just gone. A forgotten space tucked away in the folds of the world. I approached a rusted hangar at the far end of the strip. The doors were warped, one of them twisted completely off its hinges. Inside, the place smelled like mildew and salt. A single fuel drum lay on its side, split and dry. Nothing moved, but I still felt like I was being watched. On one wall, someone had scrawled something in thick black paint. "The sky isn't yours." I didn't linger. I wandered inland, drawn by the echo of waves and a shimmer of something metallic in the distance. I found a path, well, not quite a path, more like a trail carved by forgotten footsteps. Every plant I passed looked off, too vibrant, the green too sharp, the flowers too wide-eyed, like they were watching. The humidity pressed in like a second skin. Then I saw the wreckage. An old World War II bomber, half sunk into the earth like it had crashed decades ago and time had simply paused around it. Vines curled through the cockpit windows, but the glass was still intact. I peered inside. Skeletons. 3 of them, still in their seats, still wearing faded uniforms, dog tags gleaming in shafts of light. One of them had something clutched in its bony fingers, a scrap of paper. I broke the glass, reached in, and pulled it free. Carefully, I unfolded it. It was a hand-drawn map, and on the bottom corner, a message. "Loop collapsed here. Avoid the eye." That same spiral symbol, the one that had burned into my arm, was drawn right over the spot where this island would be, if it existed on any map. But it didn't. I checked my phone. No signal. My altimeter watch. Still ticking, but showing elevation 0. As if I wasn't standing on land at all. I pocketed the map and turned, only to find someone standing behind me. "Thought you'd never come back," the man said. I nearly fell over. He was tall, thin, weathered. Wore a pilot's jacket from a different era, 1960s maybe. His face was pale and tight like old leather, his eyes a foggy blue. And on his neck, the same mark I used to have on my forearm. "You're one of them," I muttered. "One of the lost." He nodded slowly. "Name's Wallace. Used to fly cargo from San Juan to Nassau. That was, hell, I don't even know anymore. 60 years. Maybe more." I blinked. "You're not dead?" Wallace gave a hoarse laugh. "Might as well be. Time doesn't work here. None of this does." I glanced around the jungle. "Where the hell is here?" He just pointed to the sky. "This place ain't on any map, 'cause it doesn't belong to our world. It's a wrinkle, a fold between layers. When you fly the triangle long enough, you stop worrying about latitude. It's all about alignment." "You saw the thing," I said. "The shadow, the eye." His face darkened. "The devourer." "Yeah, It eats identity, memory, history. All those missing ships and planes didn't crash, didn't sink. They were peeled. My stomach twisted. And Kate, Wallace gave me a sharp look. That the girl who came through screaming about a beacon? I nodded. She made it close to the center, used the talisman to break the veil for a second, got sucked in instead. That thing, it noticed her, liked her. She's still alive, I said. Maybe pieces, he muttered, but whole. That place doesn't give anything back in one piece. I showed him the map I found. His eyes narrowed. This is important. This is where the loop thinned. The eye must have been weak here. That's why we're still on this island, stranded between echoes. I looked around. So what do we do? He hesitated, then said, You've been touched, scarred. That's why the talisman worked. But that thing isn't done with you, not yet. You've got one chance to finish what she started. He took me to a cave on the island's north side, said it was an echo chamber, a place where time bled differently. Inside, carvings filled the walls, spirals, glyphs, and images of aircraft twisting in and out of strange portals. At the center was a stone slab. Resting on it was another talisman. It called me to this place, Wallace said, but I wasn't strong enough. You might be. Called you? He tapped his neck. The mark. It's like a beacon. The closer you are to the source, the louder it rings. I reached for the new talisman. The second my fingers touched it, the cave trembled. Not a physical quake, a shudder of reality, a distortion, like gravity forgot which way was down. The spirals on the walls began to glow. Voices filled the air, Kate's, Curran's, dozens of others, all overlapping, all speaking a single phrase in unison: break the loop or be rewritten. I stumbled out of the cave with the second talisman in my hand, heart hammering, pulse racing. The world around me flickered at the edges, glitching like an old VHS. Wallace didn't follow. He just stood there, arms at his sides, eyes distant. This is as far as I go, he said. If you make it out, tell people we were here. Tell them we fought it. I tried to argue, but he faded into the jungle, literally, like smoke caught in a breeze. As night fell, I returned to the plane. Somehow the fuel gauge now read full. The cockpit lights glowed a steady green. No explanation, just a choice. Return to the eye, end the loop, or fly away and live with knowing it would claim someone else, many someone else's. I looked at both talismans. One burned cold, the other buzzed like a tuning fork against my palm. Together, they felt like two halves of a key. I strapped in, took a deep breath, and throttled forward. The island faded behind me. Ahead, the eye pulsed like a waiting heart. The sky was a bruise as I climbed higher, the sun sinking fast behind me. With both talismans on the dash and the controls vibrating under my grip, I set my heading for the coordinates on the hand-drawn map. My GPS blinked, no signal. My compass spun gently, as if unsure which reality it belonged to. I didn't need instruments anymore. I could feel the pull. Somewhere ahead, the eye was waiting. I banked east, and almost instantly the clouds thickened. Not natural clouds, wrong clouds. They pulsed with a dim red light, and the edges twisted like they were alive. When I breached the first wall of fog, the temperature in the cabin dropped 10 degrees. My breath fogged the glass. Then came the humming. Low, persistent. It wasn't mechanical. It was biological, like the drone of a giant insect just behind my ears. The cockpit lights began to dim. I passed 9,000 feet. Outside, flashes of things moved in the mist. Not birds, not planes. Shapes, human silhouettes, drifting just beyond the glass. Mouths open, arms outstretched, pleading. Their faces flickered between strangers and people I recognized. Curran, Kate, my father. No radio, no communications. Just me, the Beechcraft, and a sky that wanted to rewrite me. And then the clouds split open, and I saw it again. The eye. Not a literal eye, not exactly. It was a hole in space, perfectly round and impossibly black. Lightning arced across its edges, and within its center spirals turned slowly like grinding teeth. The longer I looked, the more I felt like I was being pulled out of myself. I gripped the yoke. My teeth were chattering. Steady, I muttered. Steady. But the plane wasn't mine anymore. The controls bucked hard to the left, wrenching my shoulder. The plane dipped, pulled like a fish on a hook. The engines roared, not because I pushed the throttle. The Beechcraft wanted in. It knew where it was going. The eye widened as I approached. Wind screamed through the fuselage despite the sealed cabin. I was moving at speeds the plane shouldn't have survived. Dials spun, alarms blared, but I kept my hands on the yoke. And just before I entered the black, Kate's voice, soft, barely audible. "You're almost through. Don't blink." I blinked. The world inverted. Colors collapsed. The sky turned inside out. And the plane was no longer in air. It was in nothing. Total silence. No noise. No pressure. Just void. Then something woke up in the dark. A tremor. Not through the plane, but through my body. Like something ancient had just become aware of me. The mark on my arm, the one that had vanished, reignited in searing pain. I screamed, jerking violently in the seat. My fingers brushed both talismans, and in that instant the cockpit window shattered outward. And the eye spoke, not in words, in thoughts, like an avalanche of foreign emotions crashing through my skull. "You were never meant to leave. She broke the loop. She will suffer. You will take her place." And then, images, memories, Kate floating in a cocoon of light, screaming silently as tendrils of shadow crawled across her skin. Her eyes locked on mine, desperate, pleading. "Break it," she mouthed. "Now." I clutched the talismans together. They fused in my grip, burning, humming, shattering with blinding energy. I felt my mind buckling under the weight, like 1,000 timelines were trying to bleed through at once. I saw other pilots, other planes. Wallace, young again, flying into the eye over and over in an endless loop. Children in life vests, drifting in black water. A diver clutching a 15th century compass as something vast passed overhead. Every person the triangle had claimed, still trapped, frozen in their last moments. Unless I could finish what Kate started. I forced the yoke down toward the spiral's core. Pain lanced through my brain. Blood dripped from my nose. My vision flickered. Alarms shrieked, but I didn't stop. The talisman's fused core cracked, a jagged beam of blue light erupting from it and firing into the spiral. And suddenly, everything changed. The blackness shattered like glass, and in its place, a chamber. The plane hovered, suspended, not flying, held. A massive circular chamber of obsidian filled with floating wreckage, boats, planes, even bits of buildings. The ceiling was stars that didn't match any night sky I'd ever seen. The floor wasn't there at all. And in the center, the entity. Not a monster, not exactly. It was a mass of coiling darkness, arms and limbs that didn't belong to any anatomy, mouths that whispered and blinked. In its center, a spiral of eyes, watching, feeding. It saw me, knew me. "You broke the veil," it said, voice vibrating every bone in my body. "You carry the scar. You belong to me now." I raised the broken talisman. "No," I growled. "She does." And behind it, Kate, suspended in a beam of amber light, her body limp, threads of shadow connecting her to the entity's core. I pushed the throttle one last time, aiming the plane directly into the center of the beast. As I surged forward, time slowed. The wreckage around me drifted. The cockpit cracked. I reached for the emergency lever. The talisman exploded in my hand. The plane hit the entity. There was no impact, just silence. Then everything unraveled. I was falling, or flying, or floating. Light tore through the void, spirals turned inward. I saw Kate's body jolt. Her mouth opened. She screamed, but not in pain, in release. Then she vanished in a pulse of gold. The chamber collapsed behind her. The spiral broke, and suddenly, I woke up on a beach. My plane half submerged in the shallows. Waves lapped at the fuselage. The sky was blue, just blue, no spirals, no voices, just wind. And Kate, coughing, alive, beside me. She rolled over and looked at me. "You did it," she whispered. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Tears rolled down my face, but I knew we weren't in the eye anymore. It took hours for help to arrive. When they found us, me limp on the sand and Kate curled beside the wreckage, We were airlifted out like crash victims. No one spoke much. A Coast Guard chopper had picked us up 18 miles off the coast of the Florida Keys, near a chain of uninhabited islands known for little more than nesting birds and rusting shipwrecks. The wreckage of the Beechcraft had somehow landed intact. The emergency beacon, which I never activated, had sent out a signal the moment we emerged from the eye. It was like the world had been waiting to pull us back, but only once it was done watching. When they loaded us into the chopper, I noticed something strange in the medic's eyes. Not concern, not shock, recognition. He never asked how we crashed, never asked where we came from, just gave us water and told us to get some rest. We were taken not to a hospital, but to a government facility deep in the Everglades. I'd heard of places like this, off-the-books treatment centers where things that didn't belong in the world got locked up or buried. The name on the ID badge of the doctor who met us was ED07. Kate and I weren't handcuffed, we weren't interrogated, but we weren't free either. They gave us separate rooms, sterile, windowless, cameras in every corner, nurses who didn't wear name tags, and every day they asked the same questions. How did you escape the eye? What did you see on the other side? Did the mark transfer? The mark, that grey scar on my forearm, the one the entity had left on me. I'd checked it the moment I woke up on the beach. It was gone. But Kate had it now. I was never meant to come back, she said, whispering through the air vent between our rooms. You pulled me through. That thing. The entity. It marked you, but I think the talisman transferred the connection. Her voice cracked. I think I brought some of it with me. The next day, the nurses doubled her medication. Mine too. We stopped talking. That's when the dreams started. I began waking up screaming, gasping for air, clawing at my sheets. I dreamed of spirals in the sky, eyes opening under the sea, and bodies suspended mid-air, frozen between time. Each time I awoke, the fluorescent light above my bed would flicker, and the camera in the corner would whir. One night I sat up in bed and found a man standing in the corner of the room. Not a guard, not a doctor. He was dressed in a black suit, face pale as ash, his eyes two swirling voids. He didn't speak, just watched me for a full minute, then dissolved into dust. The next morning I demanded answers. That's when they took me to Room 0. Room 0 was beneath the facility. They blindfolded me during the descent, but I counted at least 4 elevator floors before the air changed. Denser, colder, like I was underwater. The room was circular, metallic, and filled with humming machines. At its center was a glass tank filled with glowing green fluid. Suspended inside was a creature I recognized instantly, one of the shadows from the eye. Not the entity itself, but a fragment, a sliver. Its shape constantly shifted. First a human skull, then a spiral of mouths, then something that looked like me. Its eyes opened, and I felt a pressure in my skull. You've touched the source, said a voice behind me. It was a woman in a lab coat, mid-40s. Her badge simply read, Director Vance. We've only ever seen one pilot escape the eye before. You're the second. I turned, my throat dry. Wallace Curran. She nodded. That was 1983. We detained him here too. He lasted 4 days. I stepped closer to the tank. And Kate? She's a problem, Vance said. She was in the eye too long. It may have fully assimilated her. If that's the case, the mark is a tether. It could pull her, or all of us, back. I didn't sleep that night. Kate didn't either. When I whispered her name through the vent, she was already awake. I can hear them, she said. Who? She hesitated. Everyone the triangle ever took. She began listing names she couldn't possibly know, passengers on missing flights, sailors from the Cyclops, divers who vanished in blue holes. Some had been lost for centuries. They're still alive, Mike, she whispered, trapped like echoes in the eye, and they want out. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. That night, the power failed. Only for 2 minutes. But it was long enough. When the backup lights kicked in, all doors in the wing had unlocked. My door stood ajar. The hallway buzzed with a red emergency light. Kate stood outside, barefoot, trembling. The mark on her arm was glowing, faintly, pulsing in time with the alarms. "Something's happening," she said. The glass tank downstairs, it had cracked. We escaped in the chaos. Alarms howled through the building. Guards shouted. Somewhere behind us, something screamed. Not human, not animal, something ancient and wrong. Kate and I made it to the surface through a maintenance shaft. The Florida sky above us was ink black, the moon hidden behind thunderclouds. No one followed us. No one could. Whatever was happening back there, EDO wasn't in control anymore. We hitched a ride on a fishing boat bound for Marathon. The captain never asked questions, just saw the mark on Kate's arm, crossed himself, and gave us food and silence. Now we're hiding in a cheap motel off Route 1. Kate sleeps fitfully, the dreams still come, and tonight, for the first time, I had one too. I saw the eye, wide open in the sky, but this time it wasn't above the ocean. It was above land. A city. The spiral had moved. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart hammering like a war drum, the taste of salt still on my tongue. My dream, the eye over the city, wasn't fading like dreams normally do. It was settling, anchoring itself in my memory like a warning. I couldn't shake the image, skyscrapers bending toward a vortex in the sky, windows shattering upward instead of down, people walking in reverse, speaking in guttural voices, and then silence. A silence so total, so unnatural, it made my ears ache even in sleep. Kate was already sitting on the edge of her bed when I opened my eyes. She stared at the motel's stained carpet like it had whispered something only she could hear. The television buzzed with static behind her, even though we'd never turned it on. "They're coming," she said softly, "and not just for us." We left the motel before dawn. We couldn't stay in one place anymore. Every night the mark on Kate's arm pulsed brighter, spreading like veins of frost up to her shoulder. It didn't hurt her, but it hurt something, somewhere. I could feel it when she slept, like her heartbeat was syncing with something far beneath the earth. We kept to back roads, avoided cell towers, stayed away from airports. I knew the government was looking for us. Maybe not to kill us, but to contain us. People who escape the eye aren't allowed to just live. We're walking contagions, portals with skin. On the third day, while resting in a quiet wooded campground near Ocala, Kate whispered something that froze me in place. "They're not in the triangle anymore." I leaned in, terrified to ask, "Then where?" She didn't blink. "They're here." That night I saw the spiral in the real sky. It began as a shimmer, like heat waves over the treetops. Then a faint howl, low and far away, rising in pitch like a distant jet engine. But there were no planes, just the stars, flickering oddly in patterns I didn't recognize. Then, like a drop of ink in water, a ripple formed above the horizon. Kate stood beside me, eyes wide, arm glowing. "It followed us." "No," I said, "you brought it." The spiral opened, not fully, just a crack. But enough. Enough for the shadows to peek through. I saw them, people half-formed and shivering, bodies rippling like mirages. Some wore flight suits, others had uniforms from decades past. Their mouths moved in perfect sync, but no sound emerged. Then one broke from the others, ran toward us through the trees, not touching ground, hovering inches above the earth. He stopped 10 feet from us. It was Wallace Curran. "Turn it back," he said, though his voice didn't come from his mouth. It came from inside my head. "You let it bleed into this world. It never stops once it tastes land." Kate reached for the talisman in her pocket, the one we'd found in the eye, the one that freed her. It was cracked now, leaking small flakes of obsidian. Useless. Wallace looked directly at her, eyes burning with mournful clarity. The spiral spreads. Then he vanished. The sky above us closed, and the wind died. We started seeing news reports the next day, weather anomalies over Miami, sea levels dropping 2 feet in 1 hour, a private plane that landed in Tampa, empty, no pilot, no passengers, but still warm seats. Then came the dreams. Not just ours, everyone's. People online posted about the spiral sky, men with mirrored eyes, buildings melting like wax in their dreams. Forums filled with theories, aliens, secret weapons, God. But some knew. The ones who'd been touched, the ones with the mark. Kate had begun to fade, literally. Her fingertips sometimes blurred like motion trails, like she was vibrating slightly out of sync with the world. She started forgetting words. Her eyes would wander to places that weren't there. And some nights, she'd whisper things in languages I don't think were human. She wasn't scared. She was resigned. "It chose me to open the gate," she said one evening as we looked out over a field of telephone poles bent at perfect 45-degree angles. The eye was never a place. It was a threshold, and I was its key. I held her hand. "Then we'll shut it." She smiled, faint and hollow. "That's not how it works." 3 days ago, Kate disappeared. I woke up in an abandoned barn we'd holed up in, outside Valdosta, Georgia. Her sleeping bag was cold, the mark on her arm, gone. In its place on the inside of my wrist, a new one had formed. A spiral, not grey this time. Black. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. Because the moment I touched it, I understood. I heard the hum of all the lost voices, felt the silence between the stars, saw the eye over every city, not just one, every dream, every nightmare, every vanishing, a map of doorways. The spiral hadn't moved. It had multiplied. So here I am, in a motel again, not hiding, waiting, because I don't have much time left. The mark spreads fast now. It pulses every few minutes, like a second heartbeat. At night, I see flashes of the other side, floating bodies, infinite water, spirals in everything, smoke, clouds, eyes, my own veins. I'm writing this down because I want you to know, the Bermuda Triangle is not a place. It's not a location you can map or avoid. It's a concept. A predator. It waits for minds that wander too far from the truth. And I wandered too far. If you've seen the eye in your dreams, if you've felt your blood run cold for no reason, if electronics around you flicker, if compasses spin when you're near, if you've ever heard a low hum from an empty sky, you've already been marked. Run. It won't save you, but at least you'll understand. When the spiral comes for your city, and it will, remember, it doesn't want your body, it wants your soul. And it's very hungry. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe.